Chris from Codify Academy here. In this video, I'm going to show you some major differences between HTML and CSS. Okay, so HTML and CSS are just two markup languages. They get used together to make websites. They both look completely different and do completely different things, so be sure to take notes, practice along with the videos, and read more into each term. Oh, and one last thing before we start. These markup languages have been through many versions, and we're going to be writing in HTML5 and CSS3, but we're just going to refer to them as HTML and CSS. For hypertext markup language, this is also known as HTML, we need to know about elements, tags, and attributes. So elements are used to create structure for a website, and they generally consist of three things: the start tag, the content in the middle, and an end tag. Here is an example of a paragraph element. We can see the words are just wrapped around a start and an end tag. Tags are going to be used to make the start and the end of an HTML element. Here's an example of that. Notice this is very similar to the element, but it's just missing content. So tags and elements are basically the same thing. The words are often interchanged because we don't normally create tags without adding content. Tags are created with these opening and closing angle brackets. You know them as less than or greater than signs. And the only difference between the start and the end tag is going to be this /. Last, we have attributes. Attributes are not required, but when attributes are used, they're going to be added to a start tag. Remember, that's the first piece of any element. Attributes are going to change how HTML normally behaves. You'll understand what this means the more elements you create and the more attributes that you add. So basically, it just changes how they normally act. We have the attribute name is set equal to a set of quotes and a value inside of those quotes. There are many elements and many attributes, so we're going to take it slow and just look at one example. This tag is from the template that we created. This link has two attributes on the start tag. Notice they're separated by a space and they're both highlighted. So we have the first attribute name, which is rel, and the second attribute name, which is href. The value, which is in the quotes for the first one, rel, is going to be used to tell the browser what to expect. Basically, expect to see a CSS style sheet here. And the value for the second one, the href, again, this is in quotes, and it tells the browser where a file is located. And then the browser says, okay, once I get that file for you, I'm going to send it back to you, and you can use that file. The file that we included is going to allow us to create CSS on a separate sheet, and then actually include it into our HTML. And this would not be possible without those rel and href attributes and those exact values. This is really, really common. We'll use this one a bunch. Hopefully you've been thinking to yourself all along, hey, where's that closing link tag? Because we said every element has a start and an end tag, right? This one only has a start tag. So a small percentage of HTML elements are actually known as void tags or self-closing tags. But luckily there's only three that we really need to remember. We'll have the link, the meta, and the img tag, and we'll work with these a bunch going forward. To learn HTML, you need to learn about elements and how we use them together with attributes. Okay, let's move on to CSS. There are three things we need to know about here. We have selectors, properties, and values. Luckily, properties and values go together, and they all work within a selector. So let's go back real quick. Cascading style sheets, or CSS, gives us a way to add styles to our HTML. We're literally just changing the look of our web page. Selectors are just a fancy name for the elements that we choose to style. There are many different types of selectors, but we're going to check that out later. So for now, let's just keep it simple. We're going to use something called an HTML selector. We can choose something like the P element in CSS and then follow this up with curly brackets. Okay, so the selector is the P tag. And then we have these curly brackets. And inside, we can add the property value pairs. There are about 300 properties. We use about 50 on a regular basis, I would say. So for now, again, let's just keep it simple. We're going to apply this to a selector. So inside of our curly brackets, we're going to choose a property to change. We're going to add a colon and then change the value of that property. And then we're going to follow that up with a semicolon to end the statement. This is actually going to separate out the property value pairs. Oh, and another thing, you can have as many property and value pairs as you want inside of a selector. Don't worry about trying to memorize all of the possible ways to select an element or add a property and the values that can go along with those selectors. That's going to happen over time, similar to our HTML elements and the attributes we can add to them. Now that we've looked at the basic concepts of what we need to know, let's start using it. So let's make a copy of our template folder and paste it and rename it to test code. So let's go ahead and open this up in our text editor. I'm going to add the whole project here so we can see everything. Oh, and if you don't have this template folder, just go back to the video that shows you how to create a template. We need to add some HTML and some CSS, so I'm going to open these both up and split the screen. Okay, so let's create a div element. This is going to go inside of the body tag. And inside of that, we're going to create a heading 1 element with some content and paragraph. Inside of the paragraph, you can use the word lorem, L-O-R-E-M, and hit tab. And this is going to create some sweet placeholder text for us. So go ahead and save this file. And in CSS, we're going to choose some of those elements. But before we do that, let's go ahead and open it up. Click the link below and go to your Google Chrome and paste the URL and hit enter. We'll see our content. This is our HTML. Okay, so now we can do a little bit of CSS. Let's start by selecting the body tag and change the background color to black and the color of the font, which is just color, to white. And save this, and let's go refresh in the browser. And we can see that the background color has actually changed to black and the font color is white. Pretty sweet, right? Back into Atom and let's select the div in CSS. We're going to change the background color to white, the color to black, again that's the font color, the margin to auto, and the width to 80%. Then go back to Google, refresh the page, and we can see the changes to the element. One more time, let's go back to Atom. We're going to select the H1 tag using the H1 selector in CSS. Let's change the padding to 50 pixels and the letter spacing to 5 pixels. Go ahead, save and refresh one more time, and we can see the changes. So this is how websites are created. Okay, first we start with HTML, we create the content, and then we go into the styles with some CSS to make it look better. Once this video is done, take some time to check out the links in the description. These are going to be some pretty sweet references for HTML and CSS. You'll be able to see an entire list of HTML elements in HTML reference, and in CSS you'll see all of the CSS properties that you could possibly use. So go ahead and take some time and get some practice in. Create some elements you haven't seen before and add some properties you've never added. Now if you make a mistake, that's okay. The more you practice, the faster you'll be able to create this stuff.